Hi guys, welcome back to The Key episode 2, and I'm here with my first official guest, Blake. He is a fractional CMO and recently moved to Dubai, so I'm really excited to have him here and get some different perspectives on all things marketing. So thank you, Blake, for joining me today.
Hi, Miss Huda. How are you?
I'm good. If you can just tell us a quick kind of brief intro about yourself and what brought you here.
So I'm Blake, originally from the US, been in digital marketing now for what feels like almost 15 years. Fun fact, I think, I originally worked for a smaller agency and we were one of the first agencies to ever test Facebook ads. So imagine this is like before Facebook was called Meta. It was a really fun time. So my background is really in digital and sort of e-commerce marketing. I love this stuff. I live for this stuff. I love wellness brands. I love lifestyle brands. So I'm really excited to sort of talk about the world of both digital and wellness and sort of how they all fit together. Yeah.
Excited to get into it. So the first kind of topic that I want to cover is performance marketing. And I know like marketing is just quite a broad term. So I want to break down different topics that fall under that umbrella. And so starting with performance marketing, for listeners new to performance marketing, how would you define it in simple terms?
Yeah, I think sort of easily defined, performance marketing is essentially behavioral driven sort of click marketing, right? That's based on a specific action or a specific call to action. Why do people love performance marketing? Well, one, it's easily measurable, but two, it's usually cost efficient. And it's a great way for brands to sort of start to build volume.
Do you feel like a brand can function without performance marketing?
I don't think that this day and age that they can. I think you definitely have to be digitally savvy today, especially given sort of where AI is going and all of these other things. It's only going to get more and more advanced. So
yeah, because I feel like, to be honest, a lot of businesses don't really focus on that aspect of it. Like I said, there's so many things that fall under that umbrella that performance marketing gets, I feel, left behind sometimes.
It's interesting, and I'll bring the global conversation into play in that. I think, in the US specifically, performance marketing sort of had a huge moment, right? And then you had privacy and cookie deprecation and all these things. And since I've moved to Dubai, to your point, I think this is the land of storytellers, which is incredible to see. There's so many great, it sort of reminds me of like where influencer marketing was in the US maybe even 10 years ago. But what's interesting is, to your point, when you speak about performance marketing, specifically in this area of the world, for some people, it still feels very foreign, right? And so I find that point to be very, very interesting, because I think depending on sort of where you are in the world, what people focus on has different aspects, right?
Yeah, makes sense. And what are the most important metrics that wellness brands should track in their performance marketing campaigns?
Conversion and quality, right? Money in, money out. And so making sure that, especially if you're a smaller brand or a homegrown brand, you only have so many dollars to spend and you can only be so nimble and so elastic.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest metric for these brands is making sure that you're converting the folks that you're drawing or attracting to your site or whatever you're sort of trying to do, or into your store or whatever else. I'll say conversion is the biggest KPI in that aspect.
Yeah. And how can businesses with limited budgets get started with performance marketing?
I think you got to know where the fish are. You got to fish where the fish are. I think what it really sort of comes down to is really knowing and understanding your customer. And I think, what happens is, especially small business owners, they get so inundated and overwhelmed. There's like, oh my God, there's paid search, there's paid social, there's SEO, where do I really sort of begin? And I think it's a matter of getting in the head of your consumer and understanding, hey, listen, like if my person's on Snapchat, I'm going to double down and test on Snapchat and take a risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
If my people are on Meta, which is arguably still the largest from a sort of paid social perspective, because you have Instagram and Facebook sort of working together. That's where you're going to sort of see mass. So I think it's really important to understand where your customer's playing in the digital space and really investing your dollars in that, whether it be sort of, you need to be found, and that might be paid search for you. So I think it's aligning sort of your business objectives with where the customer is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, gotcha. And last kind of thing to tie it all in for the performance marketing topic, can you share a specific example of a performance marketing campaign that delivered impressive results?
Yeah.
Either you worked on it or maybe you just are aware of it.
Yeah. I think, in terms of, I love digital marketing, and I think that the best digital marketers are the folks who understand click, but can also sort of tell a story at the same time. And one brand that I think is really good at that in the wellness space is Equinox. Mm-hmm. I think they know their customer. They put together very provocative content marketing, which I think drives the interest. But at the end of the day, they have very strong calls to action, which you see sort of in their first timer offers or sort of whatever else. And I think, that's a really a brand that I think people should be looking at because they're constantly innovating, especially sort of in the digital space. And it's interesting because in the wellness space, because they have certain reservation platforms and like Mariana Tech and, Mind Body and all of these things, it's really hard to drive the digital piece because these sort of management systems sort of fail to think about the consumer first experience. And I think that's where a lot of wellness brands sort of have trouble. And I think brands like Equinox are constantly sort of innovating and, how to sort of take those back-end management systems, turn them into CRMs that sort of drive relationships and can give them measurable analytical insights.
Yeah, but that's mostly quantitative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you say, like, obviously both qualitative, quantitative, they're super important when like knowing your customer, knowing your audience. But would you say, like, is there a way to kind of, I don't know, an equivalent, I guess surveying would be like a way to get the qualitative data that you'd get from CRMs and quantitative?
Yeah. I think what you're saying is, where is that balance, or how do you strike the right chord?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's always, I think data drives all decisions, right? And the best marketers understand the intersection between brand and performance marketing, right? Mm-hmm. And this is probably going to be like a terrible example, but if I know that, I own a Pilates studio and my girls love their cheat meal as hot Cheetos, you know what I mean? And I learned that. Because what Pilates girl doesn't love a hot Cheeto, right? Every once in a while. Then guess what? Like, that tells me so many things. In my performance ads, like, we're going to have her walk out and like slip a bag of hot Cheetos, you know what I mean, out of her purse, maybe with a Diet Coke, you know what I mean? And then that also tells me, oh, like, Flamin' Hot Cheetos is who I'm going to go after, to like chase more Pilates girls or whatever else. And so I think the more you know about your customer, which is data driven, right? Understanding what they click, right? Yeah. What sort of drives interest, those types of things are going to inform sort of your content strategy around the performance piece. Because I think one of the questions you had was like, what's one of the biggest mistakes? A lot of people come out of the gate and just want to drive sales without thinking about top of funnel awareness. So when you have performance marketing, right, it's still a journey, right? It's not just because it's direct to click doesn't mean that you don't have to take customers through the journey. You have to understand top of funnel, middle of the funnel, right? Remarketing, right? And then retention. How do we keep them? Yeah. Right. And so I think where, those people who are successful in the performance marketing space understand my top of the funnel content is going to be different than my middle of the funnel content because those people are interested in something different at this point to how I'm going to bring people back. Yeah. And understanding that full funnel, I think is really critical to the success of your campaigns.
Yeah, definitely. It all needs to make sense. You need to hit all aspects of it.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next kind of topic I want to dive into is building a successful wellness brand. So what would you say are the key elements of a successful wellness brand in today's saturated market?
Oh God, there's so much noise, right? You have life coaches, you have, you have nutrition people. And, I think there's a lot of bullshit out there, And like now, anyone who goes to therapy for 5 minutes becomes a mental health coach. And so I think it's about really honestly being authentic to what wellness is. Wellness is so big and so broad. And I think understanding how you can get people into wellness, I think the other thing is like the world tells you that wellness is an outside job. If you look at some of the biggest industries within wellness, right, it's physical fitness, it's beauty, right? And the smallest pieces, believe it or not, are things like mental health, which is interesting, right? And so I think it's really just understanding within that paradigm of the wellness industry overall, what can you be an expert in and what can you be authentic in? And what are you actually like, can you put your money where your mouth is? Is what you're talking about how you act and live authentically? And so honestly, I think it's like you can't be everything to everyone, but what can you really sort of help somebody improve in all aspects, given sort of the world of wellness?
Yeah. I kind of look at it sometimes like the F&B industry there's always a demand for like new cafes, new restaurants, whatever. So the barrier to entry is low, but like the competition's so high, it is very hard to survive. I kind of feel like these days the fitness industry and wellness industry is kind of similar, where everyone's curious about the next new place, and there's always going to be a demand, especially in Dubai, for fitness, wellness, these types of brands. And I think it is still true that the barrier to entry is low, but it's similar to F&B, like it's super hard to survive. So would you say it's worth it to like what do you need to do to kind of get out on top? Like
I think people want more. I think consumers want more because the consumer is really educated.
Yeah.
Right? And they're going to call you on your bullshit. Right? So I think what that means, I think, to sort of break out is you've got to look at the competitive set. You've got to see what people are talking about. And you've got to say, what's really going to make my content or sort of my brand perspective different than what everybody else is putting out there.
Yeah.
Right. And the good news is, fitness or sort of the wellness space started out in this really one-dimensional way of thinking. Right. And you've got brands that are really, really good at the physical piece, like great brands like Barry's, right? Like amazing at the physical piece. But how are these brands evolving? And do they have the space to evolve? And I think setting yourself up for success within wellness is thinking about that evolution of, okay, today I'm this, but 5 years from now, I might look like this, right? And how is that going to be a natural progression from where I started? But not only a natural progression, an authentic progression from where I started. Because the last thing you want to do is, sort of be everything to everybody, where it's like, oh, well, like I started out as a Pilates studio and now I'm selling ice cream. Well, no, you know what I mean? That's really not how it works.
Yeah.
Right? Just because matcha ice cream is a thing doesn't mean that like now at my fuel bar I'm selling matcha ice cream.
Yeah.
Because that may not make sense.
Yeah.
So I think it's like understanding sort of from a trend perspective, what's on the horizon. Right? And sort of being ahead of that horizon and having your finger on the pulse of what people are talking about and understanding how to adapt and be nimble,
Yeah. So that kind of leads me into the next question of how do you ensure that a brand remains authentic while also scaling and evolving?
Yeah. Listen, if you can lead with a powerful message, right, then you can create a movement that will scale your business, right? But again, it's about how powerful is your message.
Are you talking from a campaign perspective or just an overall brand?
I'm talking from an overall brand perspective. You've got to get down to what you value.
Yeah.
Right? And your message needs to be around your values and you have to live that and you have to be that.
And that message needs to shine through everything. Socials,
Exactly.
in studio.
It's got to be 360.
Yeah.
Right? And when I say 360, it's from truly how you run your business, the culture of your business, into sort of how you execute on that business and the relationship that you have with your customer. Those things have to be the same.
Yeah.
Because if they're not, then people are going to feel that disconnect, and then you won't be able to scale.
Yeah.
Right?
How do you think wellness brands can align themselves with larger cultural movements? So like mental health awareness, and kind of these, I guess, buzzwords.
Yeah. There's really big sort of moments now, World Mental Health Day, mental health awareness. And I think, sadly, I think, our consumer culture is really just trying to monetize these moments.
Yeah.
And I think the most successful campaigns come from people who have been through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think within the wellness space, it's also important to have a purpose or something that you sort of stand behind.
Yeah.
And I think, that purpose needs to be heartfelt.
Yeah.
I think for me, imposter syndrome was always a really hard thing for me to sort of overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think talking about that and being transparent in that sort of, within any workspace that I'm in, I think is important. And I think being vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
in those types of campaigns is really what's going to sort of drive that emotionally compelling message that will offset things. Because as humans, we all go through sort of different ebbs and flows, right? But it's a shared experience.
Yeah.
But it's just about, I think that those campaigns are really just sort of come down to how vulnerable you want to be.
Yeah.
Right?
It's tough though, right? Because I think that a lot of people look at these campaigns and they're like, oh, it's just clickbait. You have this kind of poster girl or guy for example, like breast cancer awareness is a big one. And I know it's a sensitive topic for a lot of people. So I think with these larger movements and, awareness months and things, it can be a tricky line to find between like hitting that emotion and connecting with the audience and like not offending people, but maybe making them feel like, oh, are you just trying to
ride the
monetize?
wave?
Yeah.
I think that people connect when they feel like they're close to a topic,
Mm-hmm.
right? The world of do good, while we want to believe, is authentic, right? Oh, I want to eat better. Oh, I want to save the world. I want to live in a more sustainable way. Unfortunately, can feel very superficial.
Yeah.
Now, it's only when people feel close to a topic or to have experience. Oh, I know a friend. Oh, I have a whatever. So I think that like when it comes to these sorts of very important physical, mental sort of awareness plays, it's important to draw the people from within your community, the people that you take class with, right? That may not know that the person next to you is going through X, Y, and Z, or has been through X, Y, and Z. And I think that sort of bringing people together in that way and helping them understand that we have much more in common than we do separate.
Yeah.
And making it feel close to home.
Yeah.
Which can be really hard to do, is really what's going to sort of drive, I think, sort of that response. And whether that response be we're raising money or we're, whatever else. I think the closer that people feel to something, then the deeper the chance you have for them to sort of take action.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I actually have a great example of that. There was a brand that I coached called the Giving Keys. It's a small brand in Los Angeles. And they sort of employed people who were experiencing homelessness. So they would basically hire homeless folks, get them employed, help them find housing. And I love the message. I love the founder, Caitlin Crosby, a great friend of mine. And, from afar, because I loved Caitlin and I sort of loved the message, I would purchase the keys online all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until I sort of got into that business
Mm-hmm.
and understood what homeless people go through and how they got to where they got, that it even became more important to me that people knew what this brand was about and what it was going to do. Because I was so close day in and day out with that production team who, would take buses to go XYZ, who probably like literally the night before was sleeping on a bench. And I was so close to them that I was like, oh, wow, I understand your journey. And I want to make sure that I see you along, right? And get you to that next phase of your life,
Yeah.
And our goal there was always to get them a job that was, even bigger and better. So I think that's sort of like from my own life experience, a brand that I've worked for, sort of a give back brand that I found even more powerful once I was sort of working side by side with these people.
Yeah. In your opinion, what role does storytelling play in shaping a brand's brand identity and customer loyalty?
Well, your story is about who you are, right? Nuts and bolts. And I think that can get so convoluted, right? But you're who you are is your why,
Mm-hmm.
right? And your story needs to tell your why, because there's a lot of people with a lot of purposes and a lot of different whys. But I think knowing your why and understanding your North Star needs to drive your story, right? In a big way. And that doesn't mean exploiting something.
Yeah.
Right? It means standing behind something.
How do you think the concept of community ties into branding and marketing?
Your community is your value system. What's your value system? Right? Why do churches work? Well, because you understand that there's a value system in place. Right? And I think where a lot of brands fall short of community is because they don't understand their own value system and they can't really truly define what their community is. So if you, from a brand perspective, are very zeroed in on what your value system is, right, then the people will follow, right? And I think that sometimes we build communities on false assumptions. So it's important that, your community is authentic to your value system. Yeah,
there has to be alignment there.
Yeah.
I know you kind of already mentioned one, but can you give an example of a wellness brand that you admire and why?
I love Nike. Nike could never go wrong. I mean, listen, not only do they have a superior product, but they do a really good job at the balance between brand and performance. Their ads inspire you to click. With Nike, they're so fantastic at inspiring people to click. And, not falling short of their brand or their story or their heritage at the sake of selling a sneaker.
Yeah.
We know that that's the end goal. And I think as a customer, like, we understand that that's the end goal. But they sort of carry us there, you know what I mean? Without cutting corners. I think Nike aspirationally is an amazing brand. And I think they do a really great job sort of in the digital space. And being innovative and capturing different audiences and understanding segmentation, right? But again, they're also really good at community. Yeah. We all know what Nike's value is, right? Yeah. It's go for it. It's do it. Yeah. Right? And that's what they inspire people to do in all of their stories, right? That doesn't change. Yeah. The shoe might change. The fashion might change. You know what I mean? The sport might change, but the message is the same.
So I want to talk a little bit about navigating the challenges in wellness marketing. So what would you say is the biggest marketing challenge facing wellness businesses today?
I would say, I think that people still don't know how to define wellness. Okay. How do you define wellness?
It's so broad, I think.
Yeah.
It can, and I also think that it can have different definitions to different people. For me, wellness is a holistic concept tying in fitness, sleep, self-care, um, you know,
You want to know what wellness is to me?
what is it?
Being happy.
Yeah. Simple.
Simple,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't mean you or I are wrong,
Yeah.
right? Wellness is fulfillment.
Yeah.
Wellness is joy. Wellness is peace, right? In all aspects of the things that make up wellness, outside, inside, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the biggest challenge is people get so caught up in one aspect of what wellness is, and they forget that wellness is emotional.
So are there any specific trends in wellness that you think are, this is a kind of a two-part, so overhyped and underutilized?
Oh my God, if I hear about meal prep one more time, there's so much food out there.
Yeah.
So much food. If there's something not to do, it's food. Just don't do meal prep, because there's literally a new meal prep program
Yeah.
every
Yeah. It's a lot.
I feel like every 5 minutes a new meal prep. So I'm tired of hearing about meal prep. Sorry for all the nutrition folks out there. I love you so much. Just don't do any more meal prep. I think that's a period question for me.
And what about underutilized?
Let's talk about things that matter. Let's talk about relationships more. You know what I mean? Let's talk about feelings more. Let's break down the tough exterior that we sort of put up as humans. I think as we sort of go through life, I think we think that we sort of we heal ourselves from things, but we don't actually heal. What we do is we build walls and we build defense mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we can break down those walls and understand each other better, we'd be in a much better place.
Mm-hmm.
I think globally. So let's talk about that, right?
Yeah.
To me, like that is where this is all going, or where it all needs to go, or where it all should go.
Yeah. And what about, I'll re-ask you that question to, in the context of fitness studios or gyms, like what would you say is something that's overhyped and underutilized?
Yeah. Your workout's great, but get to know your people.
Yeah.
Get to know who's coming in and out of the door. And when I say get to know them, know everything about them. Kids, spouse, moms,
Yeah.
dads.
Not a superficial level, like
Yeah.
know them, know what they do.
Listen, it's like, thanks for the biceps, but, maybe ask me about, the new person I'm dating, or, you know what I mean? I think, especially, I think fitness can feel so transactional.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you a good product.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get a great workout. You're going to walk out. You're going to feel great. But how do we close that conversation?
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of fitness brands or wellness brands don't know how to close that conversation.
Would you say, though, that you don't really want to close it? You want to keep it open? And
Well, yeah. So I think when I say close the conversation, I mean a 360 conversation.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think is what I mean by that. I think you want to you want to keep the conversation ongoing. But I think it's almost like, hi, Huda, great to meet you. What a great handshake. Okay. And then you kind of just stop there.
Yeah.
It's like, thank you. That was such a great introduction. Versus, hi, Huda, thanks for the handshake. How are you? What's going on?
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's asking those probing questions, right?
Yeah.
Even as instructors, I mean, I also teach for fun. And I think, the greatest classes I've ever taught is when my room was a conversation.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't just you coming into my room and me telling you what to do, right? It wasn't just a transaction. It was me also sort of feeling what you're feeling and understanding what you're feeling, right? Because that level of energy, which I think is really hard to crack, breaking down that third wall, I think a lot of trainers it takes years and years and years to finesse that skill.
Yeah.
But once you know how to unlock that, you can create a movement that's so special.
Yeah.
Agreed.
How can wellness businesses build loyalty among customers who are increasingly spoiled for choice?
You just have to care. Loyalty comes down to caring,
Mm-hmm.
right? Loyalty programs are built on spend or utilization, but really what it all comes down, again, it's emotional, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's, does your customer feel like you care?
Yeah.
You're rewarding them because they matter.
You see this a lot with like physical products, and you hear a lot, you're not selling the product, you're selling a feeling. And I think the same goes for the wellness industry. It's not selling a class or selling a massage or selling a therapy session or whatever. It's the feeling.
This is sort of leading me to another thought that's going on in my head right now. Because loyalty is part of performance marketing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Performance marketing, unfortunately, can feel very transactional,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so loyalty programs start to feel like a gimmick,
Yeah.
right? To keep spending more, to keep doing more,
Yeah.
right? And what they sort of miss is, and what I think small business owners fall short to, is they don't understand that they've got to invest in that relationship. Loyalty is an investment that you want to do because you care about the people who are coming into your business and scaling your business,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that relationship to you matters,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that can't be or feel transactional.
Yeah.
And I think the greatest loyalty programs, it's very clear to see that owner is investing in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Do
you feel like loyalty programs are, I feel like the most of what I see is a punch card, or like, like how I've struggled with this in other positions or contract, like projects that I've worked on, coming up with a loyalty program that's different. But do we need to reinvent the wheel? Do the cards work? Is just simple referral? Like how, I don't know. Like what's...
Well, it's all about, again, it's about lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? A loyalty program for a coffee company is going to look different than a loyalty program for a fashion brand, mm-hmm. or a fitness brand or a wellness brand.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And defining what loyalty is, I think, is the first step. The definition of their loyalty should be, I want you to come to my studio more because I want to get to know you more.
Mm-hmm.
A punch card isn't going to deliver that message.
No, it's just going to be buy this shake or...
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the result of that is, I'm making this up, but we've got a trip planned to XYZ. And I want to get to know you on that trip. So I want to see you more. And so you're going to unlock a deal towards an experience, mm-hmm. where I'm going to get to know you.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to work towards that 50% discount or whatever we're doing, or to work towards that free reward. Mm-hmm. Because I understand that you're trying to create something genuine, right? In that moment. Yeah. You know what I mean? I doubt that a punch card at a fitness studio is driving deeper relationships.
No.
You know what I mean? Again, it works for a fuel bar because you understand that that's a transaction.
Yeah.
Right?
True. Can you share an unconventional solution to a common marketing problem?
There's a lot of consumers out there.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that small business owners feel pressure to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
And that's when you get into trouble.
I do see that a lot.
You don't have to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Because once you start to become everything to everyone, that's where you dilute your brand equity. Mm-hmm. That's where you lose your performance marketing clicks.
Yeah, jack of all trades, master of none.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think falling into that trap is so easy.
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe you see dollars.
Well, I think people try to keep up with, all the different studios or even like activewear brands, or they try and
You
kind
know,
of
my biggest pet peeve is when I coach a client and they're like, oh, well, my competitor's doing this. I don't care what your competitor's doing. I don't know their numbers. It's all smoke and mirrors,
yeah.
right? You don't know how profitable they are.
Mm-hmm.
If you stay in your own lane and you keep to your own vision, I promise you're going to scale and get your mind off of the competition.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is ego gets involved,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm constantly coaching business owners. I'm like, stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing. It's been working for this long. Let's optimize on what's working.
Mm-hmm.
Stop thinking about what everybody else is doing and focus on what feels good to you.
What works. So we kind of covered like 3 major themes, and I want to get into, I guess, a little bit more fun stuff. So I'm going to ask you, what's one piece of advice you'd give to a new wellness brand trying to establish itself?
Be yourself. Don't try to be everybody else.
Would you say that advice is the same for US brands and brands?
Absolutely.
Here? Okay.
1,000%.
Cool. And then I'll ask you some rapid fire questions just for fun. What is your favorite marketing campaign that you've worked on?
Oh, that's hard. I love purpose-driven brands. You know what I mean? Before moving to Dubai, I was coaching a brand called Patagonia, which is probably, honestly, for me, was like a huge career moment. Love that brand.
Yeah.
And sort of helping them sort of go through sort of a rebrand and understanding how to reach younger audiences was something sort of really fun that I worked on. But what I really love about that brand is they don't shy away from the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They lean into the hard stuff.
Like how?
I think they do their due diligence in understanding where the world is, where culture is. And I think that the way that they actually stay relevant is by inserting themselves into the conversation. And those are the brands that I've always admired the most, are brands that are okay with leaning in to what they care about.
Okay.
Again, I think a lot of brands play it safe.
Yeah.
And, I think in the US, freedom of speech is huge. You know what I mean? And a lot of brands, the brands that leverage that, I would say, have very strong points of view.
Yeah.
And they last a long time, right? And the brands that I feel like, again, sort of try to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
They're always the brands that end up dying.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because their why is just not strong enough.
Yeah. Gets lost in the noise.
Yeah.
What do you think will be the biggest wellness trend of 2025?
Self-care and recovery.
Yeah.
The message for the last 10 years has been do more, work more, go faster,
No days
be
off.
stronger. And COVID really changed that. I think COVID made people realize that, oh, yeah, I need to push, but I also need to be happy with stillness.
Yeah. Less is more.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Final question. What is a brand that you would love to collaborate with?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Like top 3.
I really admire the giving movement.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here for 5 months now. I really, from a sort of product perspective, I think they have a very unique perspective. I also love how they're so in touch with where they are. So I think the giving movement more locally is one that I sort of have my eyes set on. I'd say from a global perspective, I really love what Equinox is doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very provocative. And the third brand, there's just so many brands out there. I gotta say, the travel industry is definitely like an Airbnb would be so fun. And I think it's just because so many people are looking for travel experiences that are unique. And you have so many brands in the travel space that are sort of trying to create this sort of or cultivate this wellness tourism movement. And I'd say like that would be right now sort of a really fun brand. There's, one of our greatest partners with Berries is Beyond Wellness. And they're really, really taking off. And I think it's because people are looking for, not only travel, but travel that's intentional, travel that's meaningful.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a huge space right now.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be a fun space to play in for sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Blake, thank you so much for the chat and for coming in today.
Of course.
Lovely
Of course.
speaking
Thank
with
you
you.
for having me.
Always.
I love sharing this stuff. So
Yeah, I can tell you're very passionate about it, and it's refreshing to see and to be in front of.